Alright everyone, we start off today talking about the revolt among Senate Republicans. 11 Senate Republicans at a minimum now plan to officially object to the election. The other day it was just Hawley, it was one person, now it's 11. You could see more people join them, just like you could see more House members, and some of them are elected. That means that they're not technically in the Senate, they're Senate-elect. Same with many of the House members. A lot of them are incoming individuals, which means there's a pretty strong MAGA component there that really doesn't like Beijingbiden, wants him to have an asterisk above his head. By the way, we're going to talk about banter, about the GOP is imploding. They're going to be like the Whig Party and be destroyed, and analyze the likelihood, number one, why should we care, number two, and number three, the future prospects if that happens. But first and foremost, I am now algorithmically demoted by YouTube. Many times you will not see my results come up. If you're not subscribed already, I'm buried under priority creators. It's doing this to literally every independent content creator that creates news and political content, by the way, regardless of their particular political views. So if you're watching on YouTube and insist on continuing to use it, I do ask that you share the link out on some other more searchable site. Twitter, Gab, Facebook, Minds, whatever it happens to be. And also there are 4 links and a pinned comment to better video hosting sites that do not algorithmically demote content creators. You should probably bitch at your favorite content creators if I'm not that particular one. If you're not a dedicated clanker, tell whatever faction you belong to they should have like BitChute and Odyssey as well, because they're crazy at this point. If they're not, they need to run to catch up to that gravy train for alt tech, because it's beginning to grow much more quickly, and YouTube's making it clear that the writing's on the wall for anyone who's not under a multi-million-dollar contract. But we have to talk about this. It's huge news in one sense, because now you have a significant proportion of the entire core of Senate Republicans, about 20% of them saying that they don't recognize the legitimacy of the elector's vote. And then you have people like AOC and Hillary Clinton, Pelosi, bitching about sedition and treason. Oh my God, they're trying to usurp democracy. No, what they're alleging is that democracy was usurped before. They're alleging that you usurped democracy, and they're using their official power to object, which is not treason or sedition under any meaningful definition. They're objecting based on their understanding of the situation. I have a feeling that it's going to go further considerably than just claims of mud dominion. I have a feeling, if they're intelligent, if Ted Cruz is intelligent, and there's no reason to believe that he's not, he might be cringy. I may not maybe like the dude particularly, but he is an intelligent man. These individuals should bring up the specter of Beijingbiden's dementia. They need to go for the jugular on this one. Don't complain about things that are essentially dead issues because the entire population's already made up its mind and it's basically a 50-50 partisan slice of the country. What you need to do is make the case to the American people for 2 hours, because you have that period for the debate before Pelosi inevitably shuts it down and the tallying begins. At that point, it's all in Pence's hands. By the way, Gohmert's case thrown out. He's pissy about that. Someone needs to remind him that he chose the wrong defendant so he can sue the House of Representatives. But what happens is that they need to make the case directly to the American people, preferably with video evidence, slides or whatever. Look, the man's out to lunch. A proper constitutional definition of what would be comprised of the citizenry does not include lunatics. Lunatics are stripped of certain of their rights for public safety purposes and because of mere pragmatism. You don't give a lunatic a firearm. They don't have a right to keep and bear arms because they're not capable of doing so intelligently. The lunatics can't vote. They're lunatics. It's impossible for them to make an informed decision. That's why they can't sign property contracts and shit like that and become wards of the state or wards of a relative. A person with mid-stage dementia would have been understood by the Founding Fathers to be incapable of being the President of the United States. They wouldn't be allowed to hold any federal office whatsoever, not in the elected capacity. The states want to do it. 10th Amendment comes in. Technically, you can have your mayor be a dog. Is it kind of sort of not technically legally binding? Can they enact legislation? No. A dog can't do that. But neither can a person with clear-cut dementia. And Biden won't even answer whether he took the cognitive test. He scoffs when he's asked that question. The MSM very quickly shut up about it. You'll notice that. Talk about Hunter Biden. Talk about the fact that the entire corporate media complex lied to the American people for months and months, trying to cover up that story. The election's results would have been vastly different if that story had been covered fairly. Instead, it was called a conspiracy theory and no effort at journalism was made. by people who are clearly in bed with the DNC. We know this because in the last election we had email leaks to that exact effect, showing that MSNBC, NBC, and others took marching orders from the Clinton camp. Do you believe that that's any different in 2020? No. Go well beyond the election itself. But the problem is this. Even if you have a smart Republican like Ted Cruz, an intelligent individual, even if you don't like him, and I don't, to be clear, they still have problems with strategy. But here is what I would say, ultimately. Number one, when AOC or Pelosi or something says, well, the Republican Party is going to fall apart, oh, they're committing sedition, oh my God, they're trying to usurp democracy, terrifying. Number one, people have been desensitized to that kind of fear-mongering by the last 4 years. You've literally told them that the last 4 years they were being governed by a less intelligent version of Adolf Hitler. They're not afraid of you. They're not afraid of your bullshit. And that's really what it is. That's number one. Number two, many of Trump's fans that would like to see him in office for a second term are not Republicans. I do not give a flying fuck if the Republican Party continues to exist. They're the party of Bush. They're the party of idiots. They're the party of idiots like Lindsey Graham, who just wants to bomb people. They're the party of John McLean. I don't care about these people. Kick them all out. There are like maybe a half a dozen people in the Republican Party that I have any respect for at all. Which, by the way, is a few more people than I have respect for in the Democratic Party, which is why I fucking voted for Trump in the first place. I supported Trump in 2016 because he wasn't a typical Republican. I'm not a Republican. I've never registered Republican. I voted for Obama in 2008. I wrote in Ron Paul in 2012. I'm not some card-carrying GOP member. I don't care if the GOP exists. By the way, there will never be a one-party system in the U.S. We've already had one since, probably about the 1970s. The Republicans and Democrats are basically the same, and that's exactly why the MAGA thing happened. People got tired of the Republican Party just doing the same fucking shit the Democrats were doing, only with incremental changes. Instead of lots of new gun control, they'd say, okay, but only 1 or 2 provisions. Instead of new taxes, they'd say, well, we're going to reduce the corporate tax by 0.1%. There's no difference. Oh, we want to invade 2 countries instead of the Democrats just want to invade 1. What's the difference? There's no difference between the 2 parties. The best thing that can happen is the GOP collapses. Yeah, okay, for half an electoral cycle, the Democrats run roughshod over liberty. The Republicans would do the same if they had a supermajority. They wouldn't run roughshod over the Second Amendment, but you can guarantee there'd be attacks on the 4th. You can guarantee there'd be attacks on the 10th Amendment and the fomentation of blue states disagreeing with the federal government. How would it be any fucking different? What we're saying to people, what many tens of millions of Americans fundamentally said in the 2016 election and are saying right now, and there are people in the Republican Party with the balls, I guess, in the Senate and the House to actually understand the situation. What we're saying is we're tired of the status quo. We said that in 2016, and for 4 years, we were ignored, maligned, we were defamed, we were censored, we were attacked, and now we're saying it again. Enough is a fucking enough. The establishment must burn. That's what's happening. And the Democrats, dude, you've got people saying the same things when the Republican Party is going to disappear. The fact that you didn't suffer a complete meltdown and that you haven't fully schismed and collapsed into a pile of ashes, long-term is bad for you. I've warned about this for the last 4 years. The Democrats had an opportunity to crush their own party, to stay home, to not give in to the fear, to hand the Democrats a resounding defeat, in order to oust people like Pelosi and Schumer, who would be seen even by the mainline liberals as weak at that point, so they're out. The left would rampage and ramble. They'd alienate the center. The center would kick them to the side. You'd have a party of JFK. It would temporarily have fewer voters. For a cycle, half a cycle, you'd suffer. But afterwards, because of the need to reform things, because of the enormous stress on the party forcing out the old detritus, you'd have a better, more strong party. That's how you survive not the last vestiges of the current post-Reagan paradigm. That's how you build the next one. Instead, you're going to have the Republicans taking the fore. It began with Trump's election. Really, though, the seed of what's happening now, I correctly predicted, started in 2012. Because at the time, it was clear the Republican Party ignored the rising populist and libertarian core of the party that had all the vigor, that had all of the young people, and has become half of the independent content creators that aren't part of the fucking far left, the Ron Paul movement. It was ignored completely. It was openly maligned. It was treated as fanatic and extreme. And they nominated boring-ass Mitt Romney. And they fucking lost. And they deserve to lose. The paradigm shift began then. Because the populace, people like Trump said, well, it's second-term Obama, so you get a weak liberal movement, which is dying off because all they have left is id poll. Obama's not doing anything else. He can, in the second term, basically can't because he never has a majority. He's ineffective. You have all these neocons in the Republican Party, though not doing their job, which is to stop Obama more. You have a population that's increasingly alienated. The working and middle classes are alienated by the fact that the bigwigs from the big cities on the coast don't listen to them. And indeed, openly call them names. They're still doing it. The biggest defeat, the moment in which Hillary Clinton lost was her deplorables message. The Democrats are still doing the same thing. You have members of Congress, sitting Democrats and governors and stuff openly talking about wanting to punish private citizens for disagreeing with them politically. That's not a recipe for success, not in the United States, not in a political system. So if the GOP crashes and burns, and it might get ripped apart by, the schism between the MAGA folks and the old neocons. The old neocons will go bye-bye. They'll get swept aside, and probably you'll end up with a populist GOP that'll actually be worth voting for. Instead of having a few Republicans worth voting for, you'll have a lot of Republicans worth voting. It'll be like the Republicans before Nixon. It'll be a considerably better party. The Democrats, meanwhile, are still led by the neolibs. Who's in charge of your party? Beijingbiden, multinational global hawk, extremely corrupt, long-term, lifelong politician since the 70s, dirty dealings in Ukraine and China and elsewhere, corrupt family full of fucking losers. His son comes to mind there. Pals around with the dregs of society, tough on crime, neoliberal. That's who leads your party. And Nancy Pelosi, he's exactly the same thing. $10,000 refrigerator with $100 pints of ice cream and shit like that. These are Chuck Schumer. How much is his net worth? These are the people that run your party. Dude, Dianne Feinstein is still in office. There are open reports that she's literally demented, that she doesn't even fucking know what she's doing and can't remember things from 10 minutes. She's one of the standard bearers of the goddamn Democratic Party. Don't you see that your strength is actually weakness? You lost more than half of your House majority. You failed to take a single state house and indeed lost one. After Georgia, you may have failed to take the Senate too. Strong party. Okay, we elected our boring figurehead who in the midterms is going to help our party get completely crushed. Some of those Republicans upswinging are not going to be neocons. If anything, they should get primaried. Right now, the best thing that can happen is the Patriot Party, sort of America First types, begin to force the primarying of long-term incumbent neocons. Because what's the purpose of them being there? If they win, they're still a neocon. They don't represent you. They're not even more than marginally different from a Democrat. So what is the goddamn point of voting for the Republican Party if they're not any different? Dude, again, I could never support the Republican Party under the auspices of Bushite policy. There are few elements of it that I have any respect for whatsoever. The same is true of the Democrats. Under your current form, you stand for incremental damage to half of the Constitution. You stand for identity politics that inevitably are against people like me because I happen to be white, male, and straight, if not Christian. I have long hair, so I get a pass. I have long hair, underprivilegedness. And wanting to take more of my money, but you don't want to take it to actually help people. You claim that, but then you never do. No, you keep taking more of it, but then you just bomb people with it. The fuck am I going to vote for you for? And the Democrats are fucked. You could have led the current paradigm. Instead, the Republicans get essentially they overthrew it with the Reagan paradigm. The Jimmy Carter was basically in the same position, sort of a vague, meandering, weak dude, and helps get his party fucked. And then Reagan comes along, and Reagan and Trump have a lot in common, by the way. Ronald Reagan had relatively little experience, had been a governor, and a lifeguard and an actor, and that's basically, he was basically like an actor, like a Chad or something, selling cigarettes and shit like that. And people were openly worried he's going to cause World War III. They've done the same with Trump. It's the same fucking shit all over again. History's repeating itself. Let's just hope that the 1920s stop looking like the 1910s. I mean, the 2020s stop looking like the 1910s, start looking like the 1980s. That'd be nice. Can we have another boom time? We had 3 years of it until the China virus came along. Yeah, let's restore America, not build back better. Biden's not going to do shit, dude. He's going to be a letdown even to members of his own party. It's going to be hilarious watching that, by the way, and that's assuming that Pence doesn't pull some last-minute shenanigans. And, you know, knowing him, there's a possibility, so keeping that in mind. That's about all. Peace out.